Hi, everybody. I'm Toby Boshan, the managing editor of Web3 and Learn at CoinDesk, and I'm really excited to have you all here for our webinar on Protect Your Crypto Assets in 2023, Cryptocurrency Threat Landscape Trends. And I'm joined today by Vitalik and Luke.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vitalik from Kaspersky. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm a principal security researcher myself and manage a little team of researchers focusing on targeted attacks.
Wonderful. And I'm really excited about this presentation. I think security and protecting our assets is something that's at the forefront of anybody involved in the industry at these times, with just the growing number of hacks. There are billions of dollars of loss to hacks and different kinds of threats across the globe. So I think that everyone will get something out of it, but I'm very excited to have you share some of the things that I was brand new to when I saw when we talked earlier. So I think we should just get into it because there's a lot of good stuff to cover.
Thanks, Toby. And I wanted to start from a little bit of personal story because what I show you today will be based on some of the stories where I worked in firsthand. I got to see people who lost substantial amount of money. We're talking about hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of dollars. And when you look into their eyes, you know, this infinite sadness, people who just started a company, got investor money, and then it's all gone. It's all stolen. They don't have hope that things can be recovered or funds can be returned, but they still have a little bit of how they failed so badly. So this is where our team comes, and me personally, and we try to help them understand what has really happened. So today we will learn about those takeaways we had from the cases in the past. So maybe we can start from slides. If you can switch to the presentation, and I'll walk you through, because I put it on the slides to make it more convenient for everybody.
Yep. And I think, that's a great place to start, because it is, there's a lot of numbers and code and, people talk about the industry, but it's all at the end, people who are losing this money. And it's not impersonal. It's personal when you lose money and you have things stolen from you, and it hurts. So.
That's right. Let's go. So, well, maybe very, very quick one slide stop at the cryptocurrency threats 101 for those who maybe missed some of the latest trends. So we, as researchers, we categorize all the cryptocurrency threats into three major clusters: cryptojacking, cryptotheft, and cryptoscam. So how are they different, and what's the essence of every type of a threat? So I'll start from crypto theft because this is the most concerning, according to our survey that we did last year with a third party. People are mostly concerned about, of course, of losing money, losing funds in cryptocurrencies. Yep. And this comes in a variety of forms from the attackers. Of course, usually it is based on some sort of a malware. And they do a variety of malware, such as, that the one that steals your private keys if it's stored on the hard disk of your system. They may do a key login attack on you, man-in-the-middle attack, where they may inject certain data. And I'll show you an example of how actually this works a bit later. Then fake applications, where they may lure you into installing apps, exploring new wallets, new features, while installing a backdoor in background. And then a targeted attack, where they carefully prepare, they study your profile, your company, your business, your connections, and then they try to approach you with a very personal, very, let's say, tailored message, and compromise your machine with a number of malware. And then they steal your assets and then leave no trace after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both the thing about cryptojacking and crypto theft and these things is a lot of people, it's happening to them and they don't even, there's no awareness that it's happening at the time. So it's particularly malicious.
Yeah. Speaking about the two other groups, cryptoscam is more or less based on not involving malware. So in this case, normally the attackers do not compromise your machine, but they use all some tricks or maybe attractive business schemes or investment fraud, where they can trick you into basically providing access to your wallet or investing directly into fake business, fake company. Or one more thing that is more or less recent is the withdrawal fraud. This is where somebody approaches you through maybe social media, Discord, or maybe a chat application, and they share with you their credentials to manage their wallet, their funds. And then you log in and you can see that there's a lot of funds, like we're talking about millions of US dollars equivalent. And then you're confused, like, why would somebody pass you like the whole keys from the wallet or the account? But there is a catch. I won't go into the details right now, but if you're eager to read more about this, I suggest you just snap this QR code or follow the link and read, because we recently published a detailed blog about how this happens, and then an example of somebody publishing this on Twitter or connecting you to you on Twitter. So that's cryptoscam. And the final relatively well, old in use. There are two types of cryptojacking. One of them involves compromising the host, or maybe like bundling some illegal miner with some legit software which you can download from third-party sources. So it just runs in the background and uses your CPU, your RAM to mine cryptocurrency. There's also a web-based version of it, which is not persistent. So persistent means it kind of installs in your machine and it stays there. And if you reboot, it keeps running. Non-persistent or web-based, they only run until you close your browser or browser tab. And that one is based on mainly JavaScript or maybe WebAssembly, and this is what they use for mining.
Great.
So with this, I hope it makes clear of the attacks, and I'd like to focus on the target attacks, because this is in the spotlight of what we do as researchers. We follow targeted attacks. We try to describe the tactic, techniques, procedures, learn the tools, and what they do. And well, we normally see that regardless of how strongly people defend and protect, typically hacking and target is only a matter of persistence. So of course, every target can be compromised with a different, I would say, amount of efforts. But your role and your goal, of course, is to make it harder for the attacker. So let's start from the most famous, probably notoriously known group, known as Lazarus, and another name here called BlueNoroff. So I wanted to start this because this is probably the world's biggest target attacker or APT group. And that is quite exclusively going after cryptocurrency businesses and individuals now.
Yeah, and I think Lazarus has been in the news lately, but just to make sure that everyone following along, APT, it stands for Advanced Persistent Threat, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. So most of the APTs are typically nation-state sponsored groups. They normally have big budgets from the state, and their main goal is cyber espionage in geopolitical sense. Maybe they can steal information that is coming from diplomatic entities, some research studies, military plans, and military budgets, and things like that. Lazarus here actually does both. So it traditionally did cyber espionage, but in 2016, something changed. In 2016, we have seen that a central bank of one Asian country got compromised. And there was an attempt. So the attackers tried to transfer through SWIFT's infrastructure. They tried to transfer about 953 million USD dollars from that country. And just imagine, central bank, 2016, pretty big numbers, right? Now it is 2023. So 7 years later, these guys have been developing and then polishing and improving their tools. They're still active, they're still out there, and the appetite is even bigger than before. So I wanted to start from this 2016. Why? Because I was working on that case in 2016. I was following the mysterious attacker that we called BlueNoroff. That's why you see this name. And we thought to give it a different name because we were not sure that it was Lazarus. We had to spend, well, I spent about 9 months. Somebody can give birth to a child. I gave birth to a proof of that it was actually strongly linked to Lazarus. And BlueNoroff is one of the units within the group, within Lazarus group, that is specifically trying to focus on getting funding for the bigger group that mainly focuses on cyber espionage. So Right now, we think that they are the most resourceful group in the world, or maybe one of the most resourceful groups. And they have a vast number of people working in coding and writing exploits and so on. They believe to be associated with North Korea, and they did really compromise a lot of banks around the globe. So that incident in 2016 was just the beginning. Then they started popping banks in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America. We've seen them in Southeast Asia as well. So probably not the same amount of money, but they compromise a number of banking infrastructure, which is not the easiest thing to do. Now, later on, when we started working closely with Swift security team, they started a new department, started seriously tracking the actor, and Lazarus kind of, stepped down, and they stopped abusing Swift infrastructure, stopped compromising banks because they've been actively hunted and they've been blocked very efficiently. So instead, we've seen the growth of exchange rate and the value of cryptocurrencies markets, and they started going after individuals and companies working in crypto. So as of now, I think this is exclusively the APT group, the Advanced Persistent Threat group, that because, like I said, normally APT groups, they are only interested in collecting information and spying on their victims. And yeah, just to remind again, BlueNoroff is the name that we give to this unit, a kind of subgroup within their hierarchy that earns money by compromising and stealing money from the victims. Yeah, here's this screenshot from about 1 year ago. You can spot the date, and it's a screenshot from a blog post authored by me and my colleague from South Korea, Sang-Soo Park. So it was released in January 2022. And the sad story about this blog, we really tried to help the community. And if you can see, it takes 60 minutes to read, according to our system or editors, to read the blog and learn about how this malware works and how Lazarus, how BlueNoroff compromises cryptocurrency businesses and enthusiasts. Despite of this, several months later, I see cases where BlueNoroff pops up again, exactly the same technique, exactly the same tactic, and they use the same documents, the same style, compromising another company here in Singapore, and also, a number of victims outside. So it was quite sad to see that, Yeah.
I was going to say, like, obviously people should read this. I think, they're obvious that we in seeing their, different names. And I think there's a misperception that it's only companies that they're targeting, or only large scale sort of like bridge attacks, hacks. But I think that it is relevant to individuals with any kind of wealth that they want to hold on to. So we'll also hopefully touch on some of the ways in this seminar, but I do recommend everyone scan that and dig in, because there's no better protection than knowledge. So it's a good detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, you should follow really like whatever is security researchers are publishing about the latest targeted attacks related to cryptocurrency theft. Please follow that, because that shares how you can identify these attackers, how you can stop them at the early stage before they really get to your wallets. So I'll dive deeper into the details, but yeah, it's a great pity that victims that I met after were not aware even of such things that were public, that were accessible. Yeah. So anyway, let's move forward and learn something about like what takeaways we had about BlueNoroff. So quickly, in that block, we did mention the geography. So roughly, they are almost everywhere in the world where the money are accessible. So you see, they somehow don't really show activity in Africa, Latin America. Probably, I don't know what the adoption of cryptocurrencies there, but I think they may be found in a much more country that you can see here. This is just Kaspersky visibility from some of the cases we investigated before beginning of 2022. So the real map is much scarier, I'll say.
So yeah, so now let's do some quizzing of our audience. So this is a slide to sort of help people sort of start getting that flex to sort of notice and sort of raise that red flag. So as you show.
Yeah. So let me explain what you see here. These are two kind of snaps from an emails that the targets received. So it comes through your Gmail, and it contains a message like this. So somebody has shared the following document with you. And in one case, it's a digital currency group, partnership agreement. And typically these attackers, Lazarus, they do their homework. They know that you're working with this group, or have been maybe browsing their website recently, or maybe were asking about this particular company. So they will come to you with a tailored message, tailored content that will trigger something in your life, in your current happening, so that you open the document. Another may be a good catch for businesses like investment strategy, or maybe maybe venture company offering you something to see their conditions of investment, and maybe they want to deal with you, so they can send you some docs, some documents. And what do you do with this when you receive this? Well, it looks like safe, because it comes from Google, likely Google Drive shared document. Like in the second one, you see docx file shared over Google Drive, and the first one is just Google Doc directly. So what happens if you open a Google Doc? There's no exploit that come from the Google Doc if you open it in your browser, right? But here's a catch. Like, I wonder, like, if anybody of you spotted anything unusual here? And just in the
I do, but
here.
I think you could reveal it. I see the red flag, and this is a common red flag in scams that I've seen across, is that there's something slightly wrong with one of these two.
It doesn't happen often, I have to say, but they're humans and they do make mistakes. Sometimes they're funny, like this. Like, can you imagine Google Google engineers making a typo maybe, or something like that? Right. So yeah, too human. Yeah, clearly that should be a signal, like something is wrong. This message should have come from the system, from the Google Drive, and this is not okay. So yeah, of course, this whole
in phishing attacks, often there'll be a slightly wrong misspelling in the email structure or the website they're sending you to. It's one of the littler things you can keep an eye on.
Right, but the first message is perfect. I mean, you can count on them and that. Yep. Let's look further. Let's see what happens next. So you click on that link, and both links, Google document and docx, go to a URL that offers you a docx file. So you have to just save it to your documents, downloads folder maybe, double click and open. And when you do that, this is kind of a booting or starting splash screen from Microsoft Word. So what is suspicious here is, well, clearly visible, right? We see that it is opening some URL. It is tiny little text. Yeah. And unfortunately, this splash screen only is visible for a second, maybe two. So if you are fast enough, when I opened this document on the virtual machine during the research, I spotted very, very quickly that something was odd there. And it tried to open this URL. So if you're connected to the internet, it will be just, depending on your speed of the internet link, will be very fast. And it disappears, then it shows you the content. But if you see something like that, fetching remote content, opening a URL through Word, be alarmed. Probably do not proceed. I mean, close Word and don't trust the content. Also, take note of the domain, googleservice.xyz. Sounds legit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what happens next? What happens next is you open the document and you see a content like this. So I really love this one because it says, this document has been secured by Kaspersky. To view protected content, click Enable Content. And then there is a little bit of blurred partnership agreement in the background. So it's really encouraging you to click on that Enable Content button in Office, which is, I would say, the critical point of no return. And it's not only Kaspersky, of course, they have other themes. For example, Azure Information Protection. I think they just came up with that idea of non-existent service or product. I'm not sure, but it sounds odd. But in both cases, we see that they ask you to click Enable Content. So there may be other variations, other types. It may be like looking like a cryptic text saying the document is encrypted, click enable content to decrypt it, and so on and so forth. There's so many variations of social engineering here and so many opportunities. Unfortunately, a lot of people fall for this trick, especially if that kind of falls into the context of maybe business you're doing or things you're expecting from others. Like if it's partnership agreement from the company you expected, then you'll probably do that regardless, because maybe that's another investor coming and offering some good. So yeah, that does work, unfortunately. Now, if you did click, probably it's too late for your machine that is likely already infected, because it happens within a couple of seconds. And let's look into what is happening in the background. So I draw this diagram to explain it. So if you have a target company that receives such an email with a downloader docx, why is it downloaded? Because it connects online, apparently it fetches some remote content from a URL. And when it does that, the request comes from your machine, your IP address, and your office is used as a user agent. So the server clearly sees who is connecting, from what country, and is it really office or something else. So this is where they do fingerprinting. They don't want to infect random people from countries you don't expect, from maybe non-office clients requesting the content. So they only would respond if you pass the fingerprinting. They also do target validation, checking that they expect you connecting at this time, so you're a real target. And if you passed all that, you will get another docx that is downloaded, and that is Office template document that and doc you're reading right now, and these two things together. So one contains a macro in Visual Basic, the one that comes with a template, and the actual payload is encrypted and stored in the downloader. So when these two things are mixed together and opened, when you just clicked one thing, enable content, these two documents disappear. So they're no more there. They are self-modifiable, and what remains is malware on your disk or running in your RAM as a process, and a disarmed document, a benign one. And this is what they want really to remain on your hard disk, because once they are done with you, once the malware is no longer needed, it will be self-deleted without a trace, and there will only be a disarmed document left for maybe investigators, for researchers like me. And I've seen victims like that. I came to the system and saw clean documents and no signs. From the target email, I could see, okay, this is Lazarus style. Definitely that's them. But if you follow the URL chain, even if you pass through the validation from the same machine, you will get 404, content not found. So this works a single time. When the victim clicks that link in the email, it's a single shot exploit. So if you clicked and walked through the chain, it will never work again for any researcher, investigator, police, or whoever is helping.
So it's pretty quick, and also there's very little time for a victim to sort of counteract these things.
Exactly. So yeah, please, no enable content. Double check, verify. Yeah,
always be wary
some
of
advice later.
Attachments.
Yeah. Now let's look at some findings on the victim system.
Yeah.
So what we discovered on one man's machine, lost a lot of money. He was a user of a MetaMask, and I'm sure many of you know what is MetaMask. You are a user. Toby, are you using MetaMask?
I am. I'm a huge user of MetaMask. It is my primary wallet that I use, in fact. So this is very near and dear to me.
Great. So what is
now
wrong
that
here on this screenshot? This is a Google Chrome extension, MetaMask and Google Chrome in Google Chrome extensions list. So what is wrong here? Do you see anything odd here? Give me a moment. Looks like familiar Fox.
Yeah, it looks
Nothing
like a
wrong.
familiar Fox. I don't, I can't, it's a little, for me, it's small machine, so it looks normal to me. I'm sure our watchers are spotting something that I'm not.
Right. So what actually the guy spotted, the owner spotted, even before we came. They noticed that in the MetaMask extension, there was a developer mode on. And that is not normal. Why? Because originally, MetaMask should be coming from the store, from the Chrome store. And normally it has a digital signature and it is validated by the Chrome browser so that it is not tampered with. It is original one and Chrome can guarantee that. But if you enable developer mode, that means you're maybe a developer of the extension and you need to modify the code and disable signature verification. So in this case, you can actually load it from a local directory. And that's what happened on the victim side. So it was loaded from a local there and all the extension contents was there, unpacked. And of course, there was an injection. It was tampered with, it was modified. Let's look into how exactly was it modified. So we've seen two types of injection. Typically, MetaMask is a huge piece of code, I have to say. What did help me at least, because I looked into that, and when I just, I entered the code, splitting into different lines, and it was like something like 58,000 lines of JavaScript in one single file. I mean, it will take forever for me to understand like what's happening there and where exactly is the malware. So what helped, I just took exactly the same version of MetaMask, downloaded from Google Store, took that JavaScript, and then I compared the one from the store to the one that was on the disk. And what you see here highlighted in yellow is the edit part, the injections. And there are multiple injections throughout the file, yeah, just think about this. These attackers actually had to study MetaMask very, very thoroughly to find a place to inject the code so it doesn't break, everything works fine, and then there is code injection. So what does it do? Essentially, this one, I think, was monitoring transactions. They even hard-coded the addresses that they wanted to monitor so that every time there was a transaction happening with particular wallets, particular addresses, they would actually send a information uploaded to a server, and this way they just monitored victims, what was happening and who they deal with, and yeah, these IDs were hard coded in that particular case. In another case, we've seen them doing things dynamically, and the purpose of the injection was different. The purpose was to modify the transaction. So every time there was a new transaction using MetaMask, they would actually fetch a URL from a server and then see if any of the IDs found in the list that the server suggests to, let's say, intercept or redirect, then they would replace the recipient wallet ID with their own, essentially transferring your funds to someone else, not who you're supposed to.
Right.
And this is the trickiest part because this is where you lose money.
Absolutely. I think, the lesson here, and it'll come again, is that make sure that you're downloading from an official source like Google Store, Apple Store, the MetaMask, or if that's the application, their official site, and not from any other places that, there's no real reason most of the time to do that. So
yeah, well, even more to let you understand like how this MetaMask appeared in the system. It all came from the document, so it's all connected. They first compromised with a targeted attack, sending you this Office docx, activating, encouraging you to activate the malicious content in Visual Basic for applications, and they install the malware. In that case, they monitored the victim for about 2-3 months. They learned what the victim uses to transfer the funds, how the victim operates, and then they also spend that time to develop this injection into the MetaMask. So they switched these Chrome to the developer mode for the extension, and then they inserted the injection.
So this could happen to someone who is not even, who already has, like myself, who has MetaMask, opens a malicious document without their knowledge. So the thing to check here would be, is developer mode on? Because it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. That's the first sign and a kind of a red flag that something fishy is happening. So maybe now take a moment, go to your Google Chrome browser or other browsers that you use and check for yourself. Like, what do you have a developer mode on, and who did enable that? Why? So yeah, take your time. But just to clarify, the MetaMask was not coming from the original source, not coming from the store, was not coming from the developer. It was tampered with on the victim's machine. So the injection happened right on the infected host, not somewhere in the cloud. So it was no man-in-the-middle attack and like on the internet, if you're talking about that.
Interesting. All right.
So yeah, I hope that makes it clear. But one notable thing is the victim in that case used a hardware wallet. So many of us think that if we use hardware wallet, then we're safe, right?
That
Like,
is
even
often the
if the
advice I
host
give
is,
people, is to move any large holdings to cold storage.
are you using hardware wallet, Toby?
Ledger, yes.
Okay. So, well, none of this, I mean, I don't even know which hardware wallet was used in the case, so just for illustration purpose. But the point is that if you use hardware wallet wrong, then they can still compromise and illegally transfer your funds to other accounts. So how did it work in this case in particular? Because we tried to return to this moment again and again with the victim. How did that happen? And it happened the following way. The victim was transferring not big amount of money, insignificant, I'd say. And this is one of the daily operations, daily routine when you transfer something to someone.
Right.
So you open up your browser, select the destination, transfer, and then you have to confirm through the hardware that is cannot be compromised with malware, right? So even if the host is compromised, the hardware is safe. So you validate that and you confirm on the different device, dedicated device. So what happened here? They replaced the destination wallet ID. They replaced the amount of funds being transferred, and then the victim was caught. The victim initiated the transaction. So the victim expected, well, there will be a pop-up now, maybe on a wallet to confirm the transaction. And it's me. I'm here in the moment. This is like a psychological trick. I'm in the moment of transferring this. So it can't be someone else. There's no random attacker doing that simultaneously right at that moment when I just started transferring. So it is unlikely. And you just, without looking, may confirm. Would you verify and go through all the digits and numbers of the, and the characters of the wallet ID? Well, we don't always do. We must. And that was a crucial mistake because the money transferred and the destination was forged. And this is where the theft happened.
Yeah.
So
it's everyone, you feel the false level of comfort. You just have to be so vigilant.
So lessons learned from
very
here.
Safe.
Yeah, use your hardware wallets right. Maybe don't be lazy, even for a smallest transaction.
Right, because then you've already put them in as a place that you've transferred money. So the next time you'll be like, yes, I've seen that address before, even though it's still not the right place.
Moving on, speaking of this group, they're still active, unfortunately. Since 2016, they've been on the radar of FBI and many security researchers. They're still out there. They're still not caught. Although there's a little help. There's a public indictment by the US Department of Justice. So there's some names, some photos, and estimation of money they've stolen. I think it's from 1 or 2 years ago, but 1.3 billion in cash and cryptocurrencies. Just think about this. 3 individuals are accused of stealing that amount of money. It's unbelievable. So yeah, there's hope that at some point, maybe, they will be physically discovered, arrested. But for now, there is only hope because they're still out there. Now, I wanted to bring up this case of NaiveCopy because Lazarus and BlueNoroff is not the only actor that we track and that is interested in cryptocurrencies. And there's another one. Although this one is also Korean speaking, we believe. We called it NaiveCopy because some of the domain naming convention they used. So we always come up with funny names like this. Researchers do. So yeah, this is not the worst one. But we think they're also highly interested in cryptocurrencies. We found them, they were reported first in 2022, and we dug deeper and we found activities coming from 2021. So these guys at the time, they were hunting down stock and crypto investors. And it was April when they emerged. Some of the interesting things that they abused, they were fine abusing, pandemic, COVID-19 as a kind of a social engineering tricks as a little theme for their documents and the targeted emails. Another one was complaints from the law enforcement coming from law enforcement of your country in your native language, and people took it serious. So they would open the document, and it was exactly the same thing. They also used. Oh, you can even believe that this is probably the same Lazarus, but there was no overlap in infrastructure, in malware. Like it was all different, but kind of using similar ways, sending you email first, tricking you into opening the document, and compromising your host, infecting. And I'm looking for the most interesting parts. In this case, the target was to steal Chrome encryption key for the stored passwords, I think, and cookies. And then they also transferred database of cookies and stored credentials from the browsers to the server. They utilized Dropbox for payload delivery and also uploading the content. And what we saw, they mostly targeted, at least this is where we had detections in South Korea, Mexico, and the UK. So they're smaller, they're younger, but still they're there, and we're pretty much sure that they speak Korean because some of those messages were very, very convincing, even for a native Korean-speaking researcher. So it's some timeline of the activities, and still in the browser information, credential information would give them access to some of the online accounts you may be using, some online wallets perhaps. And there's another nexus, and they were interested in cryptocurrencies. So one of the things they use, so other than sending documents, they also send an executable, a link to executable that you can download, and it was an installer that looked like a Binance certification setup. I don't know what software that is. I don't know, maybe Binance guys can comment if that's legit or not, because it looks legit. I mean, you click next, and then it even shows you user agreement in the end in the notepad, which seems to be legit from Binance. Maybe software is not related to Binance at all, but what happened in the background, because this was just a dummy installer, I believe, they installed a backdoor, of course, to do the same thing, to steal information and maybe run a keylogger then.
Yep.
Moving forward, some of the latest developments, something that I wanted to bring up because this has been emerging in the past months, and I was meant to share with the community before. So at least I found time to work on this and crack some numbers. So I'm happy to share something that has been on our radars.
Dive in
Lately. Yeah, it all started, I guess, from this fact. In December 2021, Tor was officially blocked in Russia. So it is still blocked now, and was interesting blog from Tor project. And I'm sure many of you know what is Tor browser, maybe yes. Users. Toby, are you using Tor browser?
I don't use it on a regular basis. I've been familiar with it and have installed it during various periods. I learned about it in, I think, the dawn of Bitcoin. I was working on a project on the dark web in 2012. So a long user of Tor.
Yeah, one of the pioneers, I guess. But yeah, big respect. Yeah, Tor browser is a great tool. I mean, if you don't abuse it, if you don't use it for a legal purpose, but it's a great tool in many ways. But Toby, did you know that Russia was actually the second largest country in the number of Tor users?
I did not know that, but I am not surprised. Yeah,
thousands. Yeah, it's interesting, and now it is blocked. So what do people do there? What can they do? Like they try to search for Tor. Like now it's even popular than before, I believe. So that's a great opportunity for the attackers. Now, what they do, what I discovered was I found a lot of like hundreds of installers of Tor browser that were not legit. So what you see here on the left-hand side, on the left panel, it's Windows Explorer window. You have torbrowser.exe. On the right side, it's the same thing unarchived with 7-zip. So if you deal with self-extracting archives, you know that even if it's .exe, you can still unarchive it with things like 7-zip, for example, maybe WinRAR as well. So inside there were 3 files, and one of them was Tor browser again. So what's the catch, Mike? Clearly, if you look into the properties of the files, one of them is fake. And of course, that's the original one that contains the real digitally signed Tor browser. And you can judge that if you go to the properties, digital signatures. One lacks the tab digital signatures. The other one, the legit, has digital signature from Tor project. So whenever you install or download Tor browser from the web, please check the digital signature, that the tab is there, that the signature is valid, because this is what they abuse here. So what are these two other files in the same executable, self-extracting archive? So if you try to open, one of them is .exe, another is .rar. So you may be looking like, what's in this rar? If you open it with the archiver, so let me click through this. Okay. If you open it with an archiver, you can see that this is a password protected archive. Why is that?
Right.
Toby, can you guess?
I'm going to guess because it's malware.
Very on point, very much on point, because not everything password protected is malware, of course, but
Sure.
here's a trick. If you password protect an archive, an antivirus cannot scan a file on disk. So if you take this original exe that contains, a few other files inside, and you scan it with your AV, regardless of what AV you have, there'll be 0 detections. Why? Because antivirus just simply doesn't know the password for the archive, but the installer, the self-extracting executable, knows the password, and this is how it works. So let me summarize it in a diagram. So first you get this malicious Tor browser.exe that has the legitimate Tor browser.exe, so it starts that and spawns the installer. In the background, without any windows, it starts this, part1.exe and then some cryptic name. And that one is nothing but just also legit unarchiver for RAR, but it starts that with a password provided on the command line, so that the content of RAR is extracted and executed. And that one, of course, is the malware that is dropped on your disk somewhere in app data, roaming Microsoft, and blah, 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 blah. Cryptic name you will never find. So then it starts and runs at the process. It registers for auto run, and then it keeps running on your system. So why should we care? Why is it important? Why? Because it's a new breed of malware, and this is what I wanted to bring up here. How is it related to cryptocurrencies specifically? So one is new in terms of it does really silently monitor your clipboard. That's the only and main purpose of the malware. It monitors the clipboard and modifies the content of the clipboard. It contains thousands of regular, well, not thousands, actually few regular expressions, but thousands of embedded hard-coded crypto wallet IDs. So whenever it finds something that matches regular expression that looks like, let's say, a Bitcoin address in your clipboard, maybe you copied a big text, maybe you copied just the address. If it matches, then it will replace it with one of its own addresses. And then you paste it to maybe your application, a website, and then you transfer money to someone else.
So like if you hit that little copy button at the point where you hit that paste button, it's replaced it already. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. So whenever you copy, it immediately gets modified. And well, if you ask me if it's a new behavior in malware, in the malware world, not really. Previously, we've seen similar attacks on internet banking websites. So Trojan bankers would do the same thing. So whenever you copy something that looks like an account ID, banking account ID, they would replace with their own. But in all of those cases, this was an additional behavior attached to a backdoor Trojan that would also do key login and would communicate with the malicious infrastructure and so on. In this case, this is completely isolated and kind of the sole purpose of the malware, just to sit there and look for a clipboard and modify its content. That's all. And why is it important? Meanwhile, here's some numbers on the addresses that it contains and the cryptocurrencies that it's looking for. Well, why is it important that it is doing only this, that it does not update, it does not create any network traffic? So your firewalls will be completely useless. They will not see anything suspicious. Likely your AV behavior analysis, well, but it's just an application that's, does some utilitarian function. Not really doing any simulation. It doesn't try to grab your, screen or record your microphone or things like that Marvel normally does. The functionality is just not there. It doesn't use your CPU. It doesn't mine coins. It doesn't use your memory. So it's just very, very passive and very silent. And at the same time, dangerous because, of the behavior. Also, it comes with our favorite software. We download Tor browser, we install it, and yeah, why shouldn't you trust the installer? So it's one of the tricks how they trick you into running this malware. So it is really hard to detect. In other words, samples that I looked at, hundreds of them, they were not detected. Most of them just had generic detection just because of the packer that they used. And in this case, they used Enigma packer, some of the virtual machine virtualization based heavy packer. And this is where, they did something wrong because I think they just, sometimes trigger some attention of security researchers because of the packer, because normally legit software, rarely uses packers like that. I can't really judge for all the software, but yeah, it's not the most popular one and badly abused by the malware authors.
Got it. So it's just a tiny warning flag, but very small for an average person to notice. And then in terms of what you're seeing now, right now you're noticing this with Tor, but there's no reason this couldn't happen to any other popular software, right? I mean, theoretically, anybody could infect, if people are setting things on a torrent site or anything, it could be hidden in any of those places for anything.
Pretty much. But I found it fascinating that they used Tor because a lot of people, it was relevant to people in Russia, and this is where we see most of the detections.
They're looking for some place where there's an opportunity, basically, when they saw it that moment.
Yeah. But I just wanted to add that there's 51 more countries other than Russia that where we see detections. And although probably they're focused in Russia a lot, this is where they get a lot of hits, but it's not the only. And they emerged somewhere in August, September of past year. Now they're still very, very active. And one mysterious thing in this research is the source. We don't know where it is coming from. So there's no URL where you can download this modified Tor browser. We couldn't find really where and how thousands of victims actually execute this Tor browser. It seems to be either bundled with some other big installation packages, I know, maybe ISO files, maybe, I know, pirated Windows versions. I have no idea. So we didn't still find the origin of the malware because it is not hosted anywhere online. So if you download Tor browser, go to the Tor project, download, verify the signature still. But we don't think it is coming from any of the compromised servers of the Tor project. No, it's not like that. Potentially, it could be man-in-the-middle attack on the network level, but then we would still see the URL, which we don't. So,
do you think people are sharing it via are they directly with other people or Telegram groups? I don't know if that would even be possible.
Possible. Yeah, absolutely. It is very popular. I've seen a lot of waves of people sharing Tor browser for all platforms on Telegram. They do share it on local networks, sometimes just Windows shares if it's part of the network, and maybe torrents potentially, or maybe bundled with some other software.
Scary.
So just be very careful. And well, I also walked an extra mile and looked into how much did they earn in these few months. So because they hard coded all of their addresses, which they randomly pick whenever they do the substitution in their clipboard, and it was very convenient for me. So I collected like 26,000 of addresses and then walked through the blockchains of the cryptocurrencies that they used and collected a total number of how much have they stolen. So most of the times, transactions coming to the addresses are over Bitcoin. So roughly, I would say in total, if you sum up everything, it's about 350K USD equivalent. Well, I checked the currency exchange a few days ago, so it should be relevant. But yeah, that's the scale of the problem of just one campaign abusing Tor browser. There may be others, of course, there may be other attackers, but technique may be the same. Very treacherous, very tricky to discover clipboard attack. We call them Trojan Clipper within the community, but I think it deserves its own behavior because it doesn't do any keylogger or any other malicious, typical standard things. It only modifies your clip, but still it is very, very dangerous.
All right, yeah. So this is it's great that we gotta finish with advice, how to keep safe, gotta help our
Let's wrap up with a single slide. My advice: build your defense strategy. And how do you do that? Hardware wallet still a must. Please just remember to strictly follow the protocol. So validate the address on the screen, validate the address on the device. Update your stuff. In most of the cases, these victims of crypto attacks, they used non-updated version of Office. And this is where
it's easy to be
exploits may
lazy
work.
with that kind of stuff, but it's important to keep things updated.
Absolutely. And just from my experience, some of the most devastating attacks, like the biggest epidemics, like they always were based on already patched vulnerabilities. They never abused like a 0-day that caused massive epidemics of millions of infected machines. These all used so-called 1-days patched bugs.
Yep.
Then official sources, I can't say enough about it. Don't trust third parties. Don't trust local mirrors through distributors of software. Well, unless you validate digital signature, perhaps, and you count on that. But generally, try to go for the source. And I would say, I heard it from another researcher that trust sometimes is the enemy of safe. Sometimes what we perceive as trusted actually tricks us into believing that, that's a benign thing, like Tor browser. Oh, I trust Tor project. Yeah, well, but have you thought about, the injection? No. So try not to trust things, and especially now, because I think that new type of scam, new generation of scam is just around the corner. With all these ChatGPT crazy features where it communicates like a human, with all the like photo, video, audio synthesis, when you can train the machine to imitate the voice of somebody imagine this in the hands of scammers. They can go very, very far. Imagine like your friend calling you with a video link. You recognize the face, you recognize the voice, and he asks you for help, transfer some money, I have an urgency. And what would you do? Very tricky. So be prepared for this new age. Scary. Be prepared for this new age and validate through a secondary channel that this is your friend. He is really in trouble. If you walk that extra mile, you'll be surprised that you'll find that, friend is not even aware.
Yeah, and you see that all the time. And social media is a constant target of people where, they'll take over someone's account. And I've had that happen to me where someone, appears to create a normal conversation over, has already hacked into someone I know. And then I text them and I'm like, are you texting me on this social media platform? And they're like, what? So it takes a second and it's very much worth it. So, and before we get to another, I had a question from the audience around, if you have any comments on Brave browser as a browser, or if there's anything, because we're talking about Tor browser, so they're wondering if you have any opinions on Brave.
Brave is good. I do use Brave in one of the environments. Yeah, what they do, they actually are quite good in filtering content. So they have a long blacklist of resources. They constantly update, which is nice. So they block active content as well that prevents certain attacks, relying on the active scripting technologies. So yeah, Brave is good. I can't really say that it's not something I recommend. So go for it. Use it. Yes.
Excellent. I also like Brave.
Yeah, maybe one last advice is imagine you're a target, and this is very personal. Like I am heading a team of researchers that track APT actors, typically nation-state sponsored attackers with expensive 0 days, the cutting-edge tools, and sometimes they come after us. So I live myself imagining a target because I know they can come after us, is to see how deeply we are tracking them and where we are now. Try to live a similar life when you feel like you're being hunted by this Lazarus or whatnot, maybe another thing on the internet. Try to use temporary devices, virtual machines, maybe to open documents that have active content. You can have an offline virtual machine with an Office installed, and then you can open whatever you want and then just revert the state after that. And it's kind of burner machine. VM, please use it. And try also to harden your actual host, not the VM, but the actual host with, use some maybe not so popular operating system, less popular software, something that is less targeted. but you cannot be really just, mass targeted, and harden your setup so that it's tricky to exploit.
Do you recommend
And
for
think
sort of the
different.
average user, something I in my work, I often have to like check out sites or log in with a wallet. So I have set up a secondary wallet, which I only use for sort of testing. Do you recommend people doing things like that, or, sort of diversifying the way they use things, to lower the risk of a single point of failure?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I've seen folks in the industry using dedicated machines just to do the transactions, and that's a good practice, I think.
And what about
But
VPN was another question from the
uh,
audience. Do you recommend VPN is that a protective measure?
do I recommend VPN? Well, VPN hides you from your ISP, from your local government, perhaps from whoever tries to wiretap your network. If you're using wireless, yeah, try to use VPN, especially on the public networks, open networks. Yeah, it is a must. But if you just home ISP, I guess, well, unless you're doing anything illegal, it's not absolute necessity. But, well, you never know. Routers sometimes get compromised too. And if you use VPN, then even if your router is owned, the attackers cannot really see anything in the traffic. Although there will be additional layers of SSL, HTTPS, and so on. But you won't even give an opportunity for the attacker to attack you through any kind of clear text or old server with an HTTP protocol. So yeah, good habit, absolutely. But not I would say mission life critical.
Got it. All right.
That's basically all of my slides. So if you're interested in what we offer, and I'm not a salesperson, I'm a researcher myself, but of course I'm coming from Kaspersky as a company. So if you want to look at services, products, here's a link, take a snap, go and explore it. But otherwise, I'm happy to answer your questions now.
Yeah, I think the only other one we have here is, are there antivirus solutions that you recommend? Is there any kind of protection that they offer or not?
Antivirus solutions. You're asking a guy from an AV vendor, like what antivirus he suggests to use.
Yes, well, it was a question from the audience.
Trickiest question. It's that's nasty. That is nasty. Well, I honestly trying to be objective. There are some sort of industry recognized top AV vendors that most of you already know. I normally recommend people to look into independent AV testing organizations that conduct tests on various technologies, on performance of the antivirus and on detection coverage and so on. So if you look at their reports, and they annually publish these reports, you can see which antivirus is best for you. So I don't really want to make any kind of pitch of particular brand, even though I work for an AV company. Yes. Looking into the results of the testing orgs.
And I think look at what you're doing and what you're, what their specialties are. I mean, I think, there are certain places, if you're in the cryptocurrency space, that focus more on the threats of that industry. So, pay attention to what you're looking to get out of it and what are the kind of threats that are and who's paying attention to them, and really moving that forward to, non-biased. But it is true. Like there are places that don't really care about cryptocurrency scams very much. So. Well, thank you so much for your time. It has been an incredible talk. I learned a lot. I feel like I have to go off now and check my own MetaMask settings. Hopefully everything's fine. But yeah, it's been wonderful talking to you, Vitaly, and I hope everyone enjoyed our talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share these things, these findings with the community. We really need to spread the word and make everyone safe. Stay safe.
100%. Stay safe. Great way to end. Thank you.